Good evening and welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Jake Gordon and Alex Lord. The World Series has not even begun yet, but the Braves are already looking forward to 2024, making their first signing of the offseason, re-signing Pierce Johnson to a 2-year deal, $7 million a year. It also has a club option for 2026 at $7 million for a $250,000 buyout. I thought I saw some people questioning like the figure. Oh, is that too high for a reliever? Yada yada yada. Yes, maybe if you look at what he did with the Rockies last year and the Padres, maybe it's a little pricey. But at the end of the day, this was a deal that had to get done. I mean, the guy was an absolute superstar for the Braves. You traded for him. He had a 0.76 ERA over 24 appearances with a 12.2 K9. Doesn't get much better than that. I mean, that's about as good as you can possibly be over 24 appearances. Reminds me a lot of how Rafael Iglesias, when the Braves traded for him. And the Braves, this is a deal that the Braves had to get done. Maybe it was $1 million too high. You're not going to pinch pennies over a guy you needed to bring back, especially one that you traded and that you liked having on the team. The Braves need to add several bullpen arms. Joe Jimenez, Jesse Chavez are also free agents. I think the Braves would probably like to bring both of them back. And then they need to add even more high power to that. They, as Alex and I have talked about, and Jake, I'm sure you've been here, bullpen has to be at the forefront of discussions this offseason. They need to have 8-9 guys that can hum it and be reliable. They only had 4 or 5 this past season. Even if you bring Pierce Johnson and Joe Jimenez back, you're still only at 4 or 5. Hopefully we do get Tyler Matzik. Don't forget about Matzik. He's under contract next year. He should be back. That could be a big addition. Still, though, I want to bring even more than that. They need to really make this thing. I like this signing. It's a big signing for the Braves to start off the offseason.
Yeah, and this is one of those situations where I went ahead and called this out early. I was like, I don't want to hear any of you Captain Hindsight if this guy does turn back into a lemon, or even if he just regrets, because he's going to regress. He's not going to have 0.74 ERA over 2 years. Like, when this regression hits, there's just no need to be, well, this was just such a waste of money. Letting him go was not an option. We were not going to let this guy go. That would have been stupid to let him go. And if he has a rough stretch or two, like, there's just no need to be like, well, this was a terrible signing. No, this was the right move. You needed to bring this guy back, and I'm happy to have him back. 3 years too. I mean, potentially 3 years is great. Is perfect.
Well, this is eerily similar to the Rafael Iglesias. How this entire relationship, we traded for him. He came in, he was unhittable, similar to Pierce Johnson. We didn't extend him. We just assumed his contract. He came in, had a couple of rough spots. Braves fans were freaking out. Most of Rafael Iglesias' Braves career has been very good. Pierce Johnson is going to have a similar career as I see it. He's going to regress a little bit. 0.76 ERA is unsustainable at any level for anybody. So, yeah, that's a good point, Jake. You're just getting out ahead of the curve because it's going to come. It's going to come for these Braves fans. And to Chase's point again, overkill the bullpen. Overkill it. It's not going to show up much in the regular season, but when the lights are brightest, and that's all we should be preparing for. We're not trying to win, 100-plus games. We're trying to win a World Series and it's not the reason why the Braves lost to the Phillies. I don't know why I keep having to say this, but it's not the reason why the Braves lost to the Phillies. The historic offense didn't show up, but let's say they get past the Phillies, the bullpen was the biggest suspect in terms of the facets of this club. We were all worried if it was going to hold up. I don't want to have those worries. 6 guys, it doesn't matter, right, left, just guys that you can rely on when the lights are brightest. That's what the Braves need. It's not going to show up in the regular season, but we can win in the regular season with our eyes closed. Rolling out of bed, we could win 100 games and win the division. We need to be preparing in terms of roster building for the postseason, and that's what overkill the bullpen. Overkill, and this was the first step towards that.
That's what we've seen with like the Rangers. Like, the Rangers go out. We talked about this earlier in the week, Chase. But like the Rangers go out and they just start getting good players. It doesn't matter what position they play. I actually got made fun of that, by the way. Shout out to the Rangers for being in the World Series for that. When I said go get good players, that's what good teams do. Even if you don't necessarily need something, like if you're making a push, you just go and get it. And that's how injuries happen. Guys go into slumps. We saw. Somebody like Colin McHugh, who had been pretty reliable for the better part of 2.5 years, just completely fall off a cliff. And if they had gotten somebody at the deadline, maybe that wouldn't have been as big of a concern. But that's just one example of, you got to stay ready so you don't have to get ready. I always say that.
It's better to be proactive. One quick thing: it's better to be proactive than reactive, and the off season is the time to do that.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the Houston Astros and how they've approached their bullpen, and it's been one of the biggest differences for them in the playoffs. I mean, they had, I think, 4, maybe 5 guys making at least $8 million in their bullpen, with Ryan Presley leading the way, one of the best postseason closers of this generation at $14 million. The Braves, they're paying Rafael Iglesias, who they didn't even sign. They acquired his contract, $16 million. They've really, outside of Will Smith, not been willing to give relievers big contracts. This isn't even a big contract. And I think I saw someone on Twitter. It's like, if they're like willing to spend $7 million and won't re-sign Max Fried, that's just the stupidest thing ever. This contract has nothing to do with Max Fried's contract. No, like the Braves aren't pinching pennies like this. If the Braves are going to get a deal with Max Fried done, they have the money. And this is what I've said about Freddie Freeman. It's what I've said about Dansby Swanson. It's what I'm going to continue to say about Max Fried, because that's going to be a hot topic this entire offseason, is they have the money to do it. Like, there is no ifs, ands, buts about it. I mean, think about it. Think about it from an AAV perspective. Like, even if you give Max Fried the 8 years that he's probably looking for, or 6 to 8 years, whatever, Charlie Morton is probably if he's not coming off the book this year, he's coming off the book next year. So that right there is $20 million. From an AAV perspective, even if you give him Fried 6 to 8 years, it's going to be $25 million. There it is, right there. So they have the money to re-sign Max Fried. This is not going to affect Max Fried, and nothing they do to add to the bullpen is going to affect whether they give Max Fried a contract. So if you're thinking like that, you're just thinking completely wrong. The Braves,
that's just insecure thinking. That's wild that you could connect a good reliever with a minimal contract, $14 million total, outside of the club option, and you're reverting back to a Max Fried. You're basically just coping for the inevitability of Max Fried walking in free agency. You're just like, well, this is why we couldn't pay. That's delusional. That's crazy.
No, it's just people who have said the same thing since 2019. So, the Braves don't spend money. It's not true. It's really just not true anymore.
No.
It used to be a valid gripe, but it's really not anymore.
I mean, the Braves were, I think, 8th in payroll this year, and they've consistently said that they are going to get into the top 5. And by the way, I mean, just like the Battery is exploding and Truist Park selling out every night, there's absolutely no reason that they're not going to hold true to that. They've been honest about this whole situation. They're never like, hey, we're going to have the highest payroll. But they're saying, hey, it's going to go up every year. You can expect it to go up this year. They got money coming off the books. There's plenty of money to go around. Like, they're going to spend money. Like, relax, guys.
There's a difference between being frugal and being cheap. Alex Anthopoulos is all about value. If it makes sense, value wins to dollars, he's going to make the deal. Now, whether Max Fried is that, I don't know. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is a year when we see the Braves spend big. I think this is the first move of many. You talk about how early this got done. This may have been the first signing. I don't know. I haven't seen anything. Yeah. I haven't seen anybody get re-signed. I don't think free agency is quote-unquote open season yet. But, I think this is going to be a year where we see a lot of money being spent. I hope so. I think it'd be great if they went and got, maybe a big-time left fielder. Obviously starting pitching's on the table. I would love to take a look at Jordan Montgomery after this World Series is over. But there's plenty of options.
Yeah, they're going to spend. There's one thing that I can almost guarantee to every Braves fan is they're going to spend. Moves are going to come this offseason. And I'm expecting one of the more exciting offseasons at the Braves. 2 years ago, they had a very exciting offseason with Freddie Freeman, that whole fiasco, and then trading for Matt Olson and everything. But I'm expecting a lot of moves, and maybe not a ton of blockbuster moves, but I'm expecting trades. I'm expecting things. I'm expecting tweaks to this roster to get back to the World Series. I'm expecting a shift in philosophy, as I've talked about. Everything's going to be about October, and that's how it should be. And listen, I think Alex Anthopoulos has learned a little bit from his mistakes and kind of being frugal on the pitching side, and I think we see a total reverse from that. Coming up after the break, the Atlanta Hawks are back, baby. Losing opening night to the Charlotte Hornets.